Madam President, I want to talk today about a couple of different issues. One, the basic issue, the first freedom and the First Amendment in our country that most people in the world today are seeing in jeopardy, and that's freedom of religion. Just finishing reading an article here from the BBC about the current status of Meriam Ibrahim. Just 2 days ago, she was released from her death sentence in Sudan, and many people in this building, many people around the world applauded that. Her death sentence was a death sentence that had been issued because she wouldn't disavow her Christian faith. And in fact, for months she'd been held in prison. She had a child born while she was in prison. She had a young child with her while she was in prison. The birth of the baby and then the early months of the baby's life had been decided. That would be the determining factor as to when she would be first beaten and then hanged because she wouldn't disavow her faith. 2 days ago, she and her 2 children were set free. She's the wife of a U.S. citizen, a naturalized U.S. citizen. She had been imprisoned by this government, and unfairly so. Many of my colleagues have been working to secure her release. Last month, Senator Ayotte and I sent a letter to Secretary Kerry urging him to offer and provide political asylum for her immediately. Shouldn't have to provide asylum for her family. Her husband's a U.S. citizen. Both of her children, because of that, would be a U.S. citizen. But because of her faith, she had been sentenced to a death sentence. The State Department wondered how much jurisdiction it had in this case, and so Senator Ayotte and I sent another letter both to the State Department and to Homeland Security for that agency's ability to impact whether people can leave a country or come into a country. On Monday, it looked like this situation was moving in the right direction. She was reported to be acquitted. She was set free. She was allowed to join her husband and their children at the airport, but yesterday, when they tried to leave the airport, news outlets reported that she was rearrested. Now, I hope rearrested as opposed to detained for paperwork is the wrong term. But the Sudanese government needs to let her go. If they are so concerned about these issues of faith that they don't want someone there that is willing to promote another faith or at least live another faith, they should at the very least let her leave the country. I think asylum in the United States for her U.S. citizen husband, her U.S. citizen children, and her would be an appropriate thing. And then the danger they feel they face by someone who's willing to profess another faith would be gone. I can't imagine why the Sudanese government would not want to let her leave the country, and I'd just like to encourage them today to do that. CBS News reported that the NISS, they described as a shadowy, feared institution, said on its Facebook page that Ibrahim and her family had been attempting to travel to the United States with documents from the embassy of South Sudan. If Sudan wasn't confusing enough for the rest of the world, that country, because of its many problems, split between the North and the South after years of civil war in 2011. And Ms. Ibrahim had a U.S. visa, apparently documents, reportedly at least by this news report, possibly from South Sudan. But those documents should have been enough to let her leave and should not have been considered another criminal offense. These authorities have told reporters that Meriam Ibrahim was using a valid travel document issued by the embassy of South Sudan, but her valid travel document suddenly is not good. The State Department I hope, is doing everything they can, working with the Sudanese government to secure that this family is able to come back to the United States. This continued harassment over someone's faith has to end. We need to be doing everything we can. Her husband is a U.S. citizen. Her children are U.S. citizens. This is an American family, Madam President, and Sudan should let them leave and let them leave now. And if this was the only problem like this in the world, it would be a terrible problem. But there are problems like this in so many places in the world now. And the one faith you apparently can't profess is the Christian faith. When the news of her death sentence, of Meriam's death sentence came, it was about the same day that reports of another American citizen, Pastor Saeed Abedini, had been beaten badly in the hospital that he was in Iran, and he was there because of his faith, and he was being taken to a prison that was notoriously an Iranian prison that's the most dangerous prison you could possibly be in Iran. Last year, I joined with 11 of my colleagues here, sending a letter to, at the time it was Secretary Clinton was leaving, urging her to use every resource we had to secure his release as well. Our letter condemned the Iranian government for his prosecution. He was born in Iran. He converted to Christianity as a teenager. Before moving to the United States with his wife, he established some churches that were underground churches in that country. In 2009, he went back. He was arrested for so-called Christian activities. He was released on bail. He agreed not to continue his work with the underground churches, but as he was traveling back and forth between the United States and Iran in recent years, he was working to establish orphanages, non-religious orphanages in Iran. But in September of 2012, he was detained after he lawfully came into Iran through Turkey. He's now serving an 8-year jail sentence on charges related to his Christian faith. And all the time he's been there, he has been interrogated intensely. He's been beaten to the point he had to be taken to the hospital. Then he was beaten at the hospital. Then he was taken to the most dangerous prison you could take a person to in Iran. These kinds of activities can't be allowed to continue. You know, how we could be moving forward with any kind of talks with the Iranians and not ask for such a simple gesture as let this U.S. citizen go, let him come back to the United States, don't kill him in one of your prisons or one of your hospitals, as just the first of good faith effort to have these discussions. I hope the President will step forward along with the Secretary of State and talk about these grave abuses of human rights. Last year, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee reported out a bipartisan bill to appoint a special envoy for the purpose of promoting religious freedom among religious minorities in the Near East and South Asia. The House has already passed this bill. This continued violence, particularly against Christians, but against all other religions that governments are in disagreement with, is deeply disturbing. It defies the freedoms that we hold dear. When people's right to their own religious beliefs are abused, in the Middle East, in Sudan, or anywhere else, the United States of America should be the first country to step up and say, we're going to do whatever we can to ensure more religious freedom.